What's something a parent did that instantly made you think, yep, they shouldn't be raising kids? When we were 10, my best friend Dylan had what every kid thought was the cool dad. His dad, Rick, let us swear, drink soda instead of water, and stay up watching horror movies until 2 a.m. While my parents made me eat vegetables and finish homework before screen time, Rick handed us energy drinks and said, "School doesn't teach you how to survive." We thought he was awesome, a rebel, a legend, but looking back, he was a walking caution sign with a beer can. For Dylan's 10th birthday, Rick decided to throw the greatest sleepover of all time. Instead of hosting it at home, he mall rented a hotel suite downtown. There were 6 of us, a room full of candy, soda, and a mini fridge packed with Monster and Red Bull. He even left a note on the counter that said, "Order whatever you want, boys. Tonight, we live like kings." It started out amazing. We ordered $50 worth of fries and wings, jumped on the beds, sprayed soda everywhere. Rick was drinking beer after beer, calling us his little warriors. Around 10 o'clock, he reached into a duffel bag and pulled out Mall 3 BB guns, the kind that look scarily real. He lined up soda cans on the balcony railing on the mall 3rd floor mall and said, "All right, soldiers, target practice time. Every man needs to know how to shoot." Quote, "Also can." Quote, 2 kids immediately wanted to call their parent. Rick laughed, called them babies, and shoved a BB gun into their hands. "Don't worry," he said. "A little plastic never hurt anyone." By LP2, he was totally wasted. He stumbled around the room, knocked over a lamp, and slurred, "You guys got this. I'm meeting some friends at the bar. Don't burn the place down." Then he all left, 6 10-year-olds, alone, in a hotel suite with BB guns. For the first hour, we thought it was the best night ever. We played war, shot cans, and ordered more snacks. Then it happened. Evan tried jumping from one bed to the other, BB gun in hand. He missed completely and smashed his head against the nightstand. There was blood everywhere. He started screaming, and we all froze. Dylan tried calling his dad, no answer. I grabbed a towel, but it soaked through instantly. The hotel staff rushed up. An ambulance arrived minutes later. The place looked like a crime scene, blood on the sheets, BB guns on the floor, soda cans everywhere. Parents started showing up, furious. When they found Rick downstairs at the hotel bar, laughing with strangers, he just shrugged and said, "Boys will be boys." Evan ended up with stitches. His mom threatened to press charges. Child services showed up at Dylan's house a week later. Turns out, this wasn't Rick's first incident. Dylan ended up moving in with his grandparents. Rick got slapped with parenting classes and a ban from having kids overnight for a year. We used to think he was the cool dad. Now, every time I see a parent brag about being the fun one, I think about that night, the candy, the chaos, the blood, and remember that sometimes being cool is just another word for being careless. For a while after that night, none of us really talked about what happened. We were 10, we didn't have the vocabulary for trauma. We just knew that something about fun had suddenly turned into something heavy, dark, and permanent. Evan stopped coming to school for a couple weeks. When he came back, he had stitches along his forehead and this wary look in his eyes whenever someone got too loud. Kids whispered about it because that's what kids do, but nobody said anything to his face. Dylan pretended like it hadn't happened. He'd crack jokes at lunch, laugh too loud, shove people around like always. But every day, at exactly 3 o'clock, he'd go quiet. That's when his grandma picked him up instead of his dad. He'd walk out without a word, head down, shoulders tight. I went over to his house once after everything. The energy was gone. His room, once a chaotic kingdom of soda cans and toy weapons, was spotless, like someone had tried to scrub the memory of that night off the walls. His grandparents were kind but exhausted, their eyes saying, "We love this boy, but we're tired of cleaning up someone else's mess." Rick wasn't around anymore. His truck wasn't in the driveway. His laugh didn't echo from the porch, just silent, and the faint smell of stale beer clinging to the carpet. At the time, I thought Dylan was lucky his grandparents actually cared, but Dylan didn't see it that way. To him, it wasn't rescue, it was exile. He started saying things like, "Grandpa doesn't let me do anything," or "They treat me like a baby." He missed the chaos, the sugar, the adrenaline, because for him, freedom and love had always been mixed up in the same cup, loud, messy, and destructive. By middle school, we drifted, not because of any fight, just the slow current of growing up. Different classes, new friends, new routines, but every so often, I'd hear stories about Dylan getting detention, skipping class, getting caught with energy drinks in his locker. The teachers called it acting out. I called it being raised by Rick, even when Rick wasn't there. The man had left fingerprints on Dylan's brain. Once in 8th grade, we ended up sitting next to each other in detention, both of us caught throwing paper planes in science class. For the first time in years, it felt like old time. "Remember that hotel?" he said suddenly, voice low. I froze. "Yeah." He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "That was the best and worst night of my life." I didn't know what to say. He chuckled bitterly. "You know what's crazy? He still thinks it was funny. He told me last year that no one even died, so it's fine." I looked at him. "Sometimes," he said, "when he remembers I exist." Then he grinned. But it wasn't the grin I remembered. He said when I turned 16, "We're gonna do it again. But for real this time. No BB guns, paintball, fireworks, real party." I remember feeling something twist inside me like a premonition that this wasn't over. Just pause. We didn't talk again until high school. I saw him once in the hall, taller, sharper jawline, the same restless energy. He was wearing a leather jacket, earbuds in, grinning like he owned the place. But behind the grin, he looked tired. Rumor was Rick had been in and out of jobs construction, mechanic work, a short stint driving delivery trucks before getting fired. Dylan mostly mostly stayed with his grandparents, but sometimes, on weekends, Rick would swoop in like a tornado, pick him up in that same dented truck, blasting rock music, shouting, "Let's go live a little." Every Monday after, Dylan came back with new stories, the kind that sounded cool until you thought about them. We shot fireworks off a bridge. We raced dirt bikes at midnight. We almost got pulled over, but Dad said, "Cops don't bother legends." The teachers rolled their eyes. His friends cheered. But I'd seen that look before, the same one he wore in the hotel after Evan fell. Excitement mixed with fear. One day after class, he found me by the vending machines. "Hey," he said, like no time had passed. "You still hang out with boring people?" I laughed. "Define boring." "You know," he said. I shook my head. "Yeah, that's kind of their job." He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You sound like my grandma." The next time I saw Rick was at a gas station. I was 16, filling up my mom's car, when a pickup rolled in blasting AC/DC. Rick climbed out, same swagger, same sunglasses, just older and heavier. He spotted me and grinned. "Hey, it's the little warrior." I froze. "Hey, Mr. Jacobs." "Ha." He clapped me on the back hard enough to rattle my spine. "Heard you and Dylan are still tight." "Yeah," I lead. He popped open a beer right there in the parking lot. "Man, those were good times. You boys were wild." I didn't know how to respond, so I muttered something like, "Yeah, I guess." Then he said, "You know, Dylan's coming with me next weekend. Gonna show him what being a man really means." I nodded, pretending I didn't feel sick. When I got home, I almost told my mom. Almost. But I didn't know how to explain it, how to tell an adult that another adult was dangerous, not because he hit or yelled, but because he didn't care enough to stop. A week later, I got a text from Dylan at 2:14 a.m. "Bro, you up?" He flipped the truck. Lol. "We're fine, though." Then a photo came through. The truck was sideways in a ditch, windshield shattered, airbags out. Dylan was smiling, face smeared with dirt, holding up 2 fingers in a peace sign. I stared at it until the screen went dark. That summer, everything finally came crashing down. Rick got arrested for DUI after crashing into a parked car. Dylan was in the passenger seat. Minor injuries. Seatbelt saved his life. The grandparents filed for full custody. Rick's visitation rights were revoked. When I visited Dylan in the hospital, he looked small again, just like that night in the hotel, when everything first cracked open. "Guess I'm done living like a king," he said, trying to smile. "You never needed to," I said quietly. He looked away. I wanted to lie, but I couldn't. "No," he nodded, like he already knew. The months after that were rough. Dylan stopped coming to school for a while. Rumors spread again. People said he'd been expelled or sent to some reform program. The truth was simpler. He was recovering, physically and mentally, from years of surviving his dad's idea of fun. When he finally came back senior year, he was different, calmer, still sarcastic, still funny, but quieter. We ended up in the same English class. One afternoon, our teacher assigned an essay called "The Person Who Shaped You Most." Most kids wrote about moms, coaches, or siblings. When the teacher handed them back, I caught a glimpse of his, just the first line. "The man who taught me how not to live." Years passed. We graduated, drifted apart again. I went to college out of state. Dylan stayed home, got a job at an auto shop, and helped his grandparents around the house. Sometimes I'd see his posts online, funny memes, photos with his dog, random car parts, but one post stopped me cold. Today marks 5 years sober for my old man. Not perfect, but trying. Here's to better. The photo showed Rick older, grayer, standing beside Dylan. Same grin, but this time it looked tired. I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Skepticism? Hope? Maybe all of it. A year later, I was back in town visiting family when I ran into Dylan at the grocery store. We hadn't seen each other in forever, but he hugged me like no time had passed. "Dude," he said, "you're alive." "So are you," I said, smiling. He laughed. We grabbed coffee nearby, and that's when he told me everything. Rick had gone to rehab after the DUI. 2 stints. First one didn't stick, second one did. He'd been sober for almost 6 years now, working part-time at a hardware store, attending meetings twice a week. "He's still a mess," Dylan said, stirring his coffee. "But now he knows he's a mess. That's something." I nodded. He took a long breath. He looked out the window for a while, then said, "You ever realize how weird it is how when you're a kid, the adults who break the rules look like heroes, and then you grow up and realize they were just broken?" "Yeah," I said softly. We kept in touch after that. Not constantly, but enough. Texts, birthdays, random memes. He was doing good, really good, helping his grandparents, saving up for his own place, even mentoring kids at a local rec center. Then one day, I got a message from him. "Guess who wants to throw another birthday party?" I froze. "Not like that," he added quickly. "Dad wants to do something small, sober, family only. Wants me there. You should come." Part of me wanted to say no, to keep the memory of Rick preserved, a cautionary tale, not a redemption arc. But part of me was curious. Maybe people really could change. So I said yes. The party was nothing like before. No hotels, no BB guns, just a backyard barbecue at his grandparents' place, a dozen folding chairs, fairy lights, soft music, and the smell of grilled burgers. Rick looked older than I expected, wrinkles around his eyes, gray in his beard, slower movements, but he smiled when he saw me. "Look who's still alive," he joked. I smiled back. "No BB guns this time?" "No." He laughed, shaking his head. We talked for a while, awkward at first, then easier. He told me about rehab, about losing everything, about waking up one day and realizing his son was learning all the wrong lessons. "I thought being the cool dad meant giving him freedom," he said quietly. "Turns out he needed boundaries more than buddies." For the first time, I actually believed him. Later that night, Dylan gave a small toast to surviving childhood, he said, raising his soda can. Everyone laughed, even Rick. When it got dark, I found myself looking at the sky, thinking about that hotel room, the chaos, the blood, the fear, and how, somehow, despite everything, we'd made it out. After that night, I started paying more attention to parents. At the park, in grocery stores, at restaurants, you can tell a lot from small things. The tone of their voice, the way they listen, the patience in their eyes. I started noticing the difference between fun and reckless, between letting a kid live and letting a kid raise themselves. And every time someone said, "Oh, I'm the fun parent," I'd feel that same old ache in my stomach, because I knew what that could mean. Fun can be love, but without responsibility, it's just chaos with candy wrappers. Years later, I got a call from Dylan again, but this time, his voice was light. "Guess what?" he said. "I'm gonna be a dad." I almost dropped my phone. "Dude, that's amazing," he laughed nervously. "Yeah, amazing and terrifying. I keep thinking about, him. What if I screw it up too?" "You won't," I said firmly. "How do you know?" "Because you already learned what not to do." There was a pause. Then he said softly, "Yeah, maybe that's enough." When his son was born, I went to visit. Dylan held the baby like he was made of glass. Rick was there too, standing quietly in the corner, watching. He didn't try to take charge, didn't tell jokes, didn't offer soda or swagger. He just looked. When I congratulated him, he said, "This time, I just want to be present." And I realized maybe that was the biggest transformation of all. Not from bad to good, just from absent to here. Every once in a while, someone asks me why I care so much about other people's parenting choices, why I roll my eyes when they brag about letting their kid run wild, or laugh about breaking every rule. I don't tell them the whole story. I just say, because I've seen what happens when being the cool one goes too far. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that hotel room, the sound of laughter turning into screaming, the way the world changed in 1 second, and I think about how thin the line really is between fun and danger, how one careless parent can shape a lifetime, how one kid, bleeding and crying on a hotel floor, became the warning that followed us into adulthood, and how, somehow, against every odd, we turned that warning into wisdom.